Welcome to this training program. I'm Tina Ramirez, the founder and president of Hardwired Global, and we train leaders all around the world to defend the fundamental human right to freedom of thought, conscience, religion, or belief. In this lesson, we will take a deeper look at how to evaluate conceptual change. Let's review the survey from the beginning of our training. We posed a question about children pretending to behead one another like ISIS. Now, there are 4 ways we would expect someone to respond in this scenario. How would you have responded before this training? One of the things that I observed when doing this lesson with teachers is that the word coexistence was used quite often. And when you consider this scenario, coexistence is only the 2nd or 3rd step. It's not the strongest response to acts of intolerance. There are 4 levels of understanding that we would expect to see.
Mayada saw some children on the playground playing the beheading game. We could develop a question that says, you see students playing this game, how do you respond? And we want to assess whether students, how they would respond. And their response will tell us how much they understand about this freedom of religion or belief that others have. So a very naive response would be, that looks fun, I want to play with them. An intuitive or developing response, well, I don't know why they're doing that. I don't understand it. Maybe I'll just sit and watch. A developed or thoughtful response would be, that doesn't look right, I'm not going to participate. And a sophisticated response would be a student that goes to those students and says, when you're doing this, it makes me feel like you don't understand what those people are suffering under ISIS. They deserve the same freedom to play that we do. And what you're playing is not funny. We should be standing up and defending these people, not playing games about it.
The strongest response shows us that the student has internalized a conceptual change about religious freedom as a human right, that others deserve regardless of whether they agree with their beliefs, and they are willing to risk their own status in the group to defend this right for others. And our goal as trainers is to develop lessons that will get students to respond in a sophisticated way to acts of intolerance. As you develop your lessons, consider a question that would address a particular issue your students are facing. Identify the 4 levels of responses you would expect, and then refer back to this question throughout your lesson to check for understanding. The survey we have provided should be used at the beginning and end of the lesson, and you may add your own final question to it as well. In addition to this survey, there is another survey that can be used to self-assess the issues facing your students or community. You can take the temperature of your community or school and more quickly recognize where the issues exist that you need to address in your own school. Another way to evaluate conceptual change is to observe how your students apply the information, particularly those outside the classroom. How are their behaviors changing? And do they exhibit the fruit we expected from the tree of pluralism or the tree of intolerance? One example of how we applied the information to a new situation was by having you create a lesson. Another way was through the lesson that we did on Galileo. In this lesson, teachers were able to express new ideas about the freedom of religion or belief. Now let's review the story of Galileo once again.
Though a practical telescope had been constructed in the year prior, in 1609 Galileo developed his own, eventually building a model around 30 times magnification. His findings were printed in Venice the following year, giving rise to tremendous speculation and controversy. Galileo supported heliocentrism, the belief that the Earth and planets revolve around a stationary sun at the center of the solar system. The Catholic Church under Pope Urban VIII thought otherwise and ordered Galileo to stop publication of his findings. Some 6 years later, Galileo defied the Church and published his criticism of Aristotle's perfect universe in his work, Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. Though he was a loyal Catholic, further condemnation by the Church and accusations of heresy forced Galileo to live under house arrest and in isolation.
Religious intolerance has existed for a long time. The story of Galileo is a great example of that. But through the methods you developed in this program, you can respond in new ways that will help you teach others to respect the freedom of religion or belief and build more peaceful and pluralistic societies. Now it's your turn to get started.